Morning, fuckers. This is by all means necessary the podcast, and I am in a great mood because it's sunny, but somehow I have the longest case in front of me and it's like a fucking sauna in here because I'm not opening the windows in order to avoid all of the sounds, okay? It's just the price you have to pay for sounding even remotely professional. Speaking of professional podcasting, I think it was Red Handed share on Instagram like their booth. So it's called Isovox booth. Basically it is kind of like soundproof studio within your home that would make me so paranoid. Like, you guys know what makes me paranoid. It's pretty much everything, like when I go out on the street or even inside my house. So yeah, that would definitely be like such a paranoia thing. It's just like every time you have to sit in here, just like put your little head into a box. I'm not dissing them. It's like, if it's perfect sound. It's just for me, I've researched a lot of hostage cases, okay? It will be too much girl in the box kind of situation. I don't want this in my life. Okay, well, I'm gonna probably sweat a lot during this episode. Yeah, you have that in mind because it's a longest case that's gonna have like a timeline, because we're speaking about a bank robbery. We're going up north, not like up north to like Manchester. Also, it's not actually up north, it's more like we're going east if we are thinking UK. Genius. So, we're going to Sweden. Let's dive in. Between 23rd and 29th of August 1973, 4 hostages were held in Norrmalmstorg bank in Stockholm, Sweden. Their captor was Jan Olsen, a convicted bank robber who created a plan from prison to bargain hostages for his ticket out of the country. The events of the robbery will further coin the term Stockholm Syndrome. Bank robberies are not always motivated by profit only. This is a story of one of those cases. We've got our crime, we have our perp. What were his motives? So the discovery session for this week's podcast is gonna kind of treat both discovery and the robbery in itself, and then we're just gonna go in the background of the hostages and the captors to understand the motivation behind, well, like actually here we're gonna have some background of the hostages, so you'll kind of understand the motivation of them working for that bank in the first place as well. And hopefully it kind of explains the Stockholm Syndrome to the best of my ability, by the way, because even I'm like, this case pissed me off so many times. You'll hear why, you'll hear how. Okay, so August 23rd, 1973, it's 10:15 a.m. You're there, right? Jan Olsen is walking into Stereos Credit Bank in Stockholm. He has prepared for this event. He has dyed his mustache, he has a wig on, he has glasses, kind of looks like freaking, what's his called? Billy Ray Cyrus? A bit. Also, like, the deepest, darkest secret in my family. Are you ready for this? Already? No, you're never ready for my fucking family stories. Is that me and my bro used to watch Hannah Montana together. That was like our thing. Now, that would be cool if, you know, I wasn't kind of like an early teenager, which means my bro is like a couple of years younger than me, so it was kind of really not particularly acceptable for any of us to be watching it. But yeah, we were really on it. At the time, it was kind of like a silent pact, like, yep, I have this on you. You know, if you tell anything... If you fuck me over at school, we also went to the same school. This is why this was problematic. And also why it was a leverage. It was like, yeah, you fuck me over? I'll tell everybody you still watch Hannah Montana. About 15 years later, I still have Best of Both Worlds on my phone in one of the playlists. It just bangs. Like, that song is just so appropriate in so many situations, okay? Don't ask me for my age, it's rude, okay? It's highly unacceptable. Also, there's movies made about this, of course, with Americans, because it's fucking ruin everything. It's like, why not have actual Swedes? Anyways, he goes in, and as every other, you know, great heterosexual, as I call them, every bank robber, he starts firing rounds through the machine gun into the ceiling, you know? He's like, yep, I'm here, this is a robbery. It's a classic sign. It's like when your drunk friend says, like, let me just have another drink. You just know immediately that they're drunk. It's like a classic sign of a bank robbery versus, you know, a classic sign your friend is wasted. You should definitely not have another drink. Now, when everybody starts screaming. Also, why is that the most common human reaction? I mean, I know you don't know what's going on, you're in fear, somebody's shooting at you, but why are bank robberies always represented, well, at least on television, as like, yep, the shots are fired, and then immediately the crowd starts screaming, losing their minds, and going down on the floor. I'm like, every single time, I'm like, is this what I would actually do in a real life situation? What would you do? Or like, have you actually been part? Oh, that would be cool. If you can email me if you have actually been part of any like bank robbery or like any robbery anywhere, and like have people actually reacted in that way? Because I was always interested every time I would see that portrayal on television. Anyways, he brought a radio with himself, among other things. So he puts this radio on the teller counter and starts just playing rock music because it's him, it's his whole style right now. You know, that awkward moment when you get a new item and you gotta flash it out, but you're also stuck at a bank robbery, which you kind of got yourself into by your own reasoning. You're like, gotta use this radio, gotta get me some tunes. No, guess what? That was not the main reason. He just wanted to hear when the news would be speaking about him, because this guy wanted some fame, you know, in the slides. Like, ooh, look at my new flashy radio, also played at all times, like a fucking maniac. If you actually write to me about a bank robbery, tell me what the most annoying thing was, because I bet this would be pretty fucking annoying, because you're like, unless you listen to the exact same music as your bank robber, which, hey, you know, building rapport, yay. Just imagine, you're like already a fucking hostage, and now you have to listen to some shitty music as well. Oh, give us a break. He now tells the bookkeeper to tie the accomplices up. Let's just meet our hostages for a second. It's 3 women are the main hostages. So Christina, who is soon to be a social worker, she's 23 years old. Elizabeth, who is a socialite, she's 21, she's the youngest one in the group. And Birgitta, who is a mother of 2, and she's 31. Now, the most of this information is from the Hostage podcast, and then they have the most information from the New Yorker article, because I've read both, and it's pretty much all of the information here is from the New Yorker, because the guy actually interviewed all of them a few years after this has happened. Which is great, because we know what a lot of them have been actually thinking while this was going on. So for example, Elizabeth actually said that she was super calm because she in that moment tried to disassociate. So as we know, this can be working as a great coping mechanism in a lot of hostage situations. So she was just thinking about the crayfish bake that she has planned for that weekend. Apparently the crayfish bake is a big thing in Sweden. Is that right? Are you doing the shit cray? Yep. It's the worst joke I ever made. Now, again, something that I'm just, during this case, I have been fascinated by Swedes like about 100 times and just hated this guy 100 times over that. Apparently, in Sweden, you guys have silent alarms around the bank. Is this happening in the UK? Because I don't think so. But it's so fucking smart, because it's kind of like that button on the tube that you can press like if in danger. I'm like, why would only tellers have that option? So somebody tripped the silent alarm here. And I mean, as long as you impose it in that way where it's like, hey, you're actually fine if you just trip this without actually real danger. Or, you know, if you're just wasted on the fucking tube. As long as that's in order, pretty much this is the smartest thing like somebody can set up. But in Jan's head, he always knew that like as long as he has hostages under control, he has this whole thing under control as well. This whole operation. Now, spoiler alert, he doesn't, because this guy doesn't actually have plans of this bank to know like all of the exits, all of the entrances. He's just, although like quite smart to like plan this, the way he planned this out, also like gone into this quite blindly as well. So now a sergeant called Rylander, he walks in and Olsen speaks to him in American accent. He asks him for a high rank officer and Rylander is like, well, yeah, I'm not that, so I'll call somebody for you who he is. And now Rylander goes away up to the 2nd floor. So apparently this building had quite a few floors, and what frustrates me, and if there are any Swedes that are familiar with this robbery and have actually read article in Swedish, that would be one thing that hasn't been explained well in any freaking articles, and it's pissing me off. And they're not like images. The only image of this place is either like of the bank outside, which gives me nothing, or it's of the hostages inside the vault, which I'll speak about later. But basically, the main frustration here is that they're not like images. I don't understand how this function. I know it's 1970s, so it was different kind of responses to robberies, so people could still probably walk in and move around as long as the robber had a gun. But if somebody knows, let me know about all of these things, about the actual architecture of this building, because I don't get how a lot of these things have been happening, okay? So as this guy went upstairs to call somebody who is more superior, one of the hostages snuck down the stairs Olsen knew nothing about. So there's this staircase that will be prevalent in this story. And it's apparently within a bank, but like kind of hidden. Brigitta spots him and screams, "Don't shoot." So Olsen turns around and just shoots blindly and shoots Varga through his hand. So now the police loses this exit as an option of attack immediately. It like loses it as the point of ambush because Olsen is aware that it exists. And there's speculation why did Brigitta actually scream? People have since said it is for like stability reasons. So instability of any kind is already a threat to hostages. So in her eyes, she saw the two threats at that moment. She just picked the one that was probably closer to her. So Rylander comes back and he's saying like the high-ranking officer is on his way. And Olsen is like, great, yeah, you sit down here and just like sing a random song because this guy just loves music. He just has a passion for it, guys. He then, after he finished singing, he was asked to take customers out of the bank, and so that Olsen only stays with the tellers, so that he only stays with the hostages that he can have control of, because it's like 3 hostages over however many customers there were in there. Now, negotiators arrive in form of Sven Torrender, who is chief of police, and now is when Olsen makes his demands. So his demands are a large sum of cash and safe passage out of the country. So he wants 3 million kroner, which is about $700,000, and half in different currencies. Then he wants bulletproof vests and helmets for the hostages and himself, because he says he wants the hostages to accompany him on his way out. And the final demand, and the weirdest thing in this whole story, is that he wants a man released from prison. His name is Clark Olofsson. So our man Sven, doesn't actually have the authorities. Like, why did you even tell him any of this? Like, always up. He goes to ask for authority. Apparently, at this time in Sweden, basically, you're either like, from what I've gotten, from what I gathered, you're either like a nobody or you're like working for the government. He goes straight to the Minister of Justice. You see what I'm talking about? So it's like you're a policeman, chief of police, or Minister of Justice. Like, is there no like different rankings? Is this still the case? Minister of Justice, Geyer, turns up and he says everything is okay. Yep, I tick all of these, like I approve of everything, but leaving with hostages. So yeah, you give us hostages and we will give you Clark. Olsen then, to prove that he means business, puts a machine gun into Elizabeth's temple. He's like, yep, no, I need everything. I want everything. I made my demands. Now the police is like, cool. Let's just start meeting the demands, yeah, and let's just see the intellectual level of this guy. They set up the camp in front of the bank, okay? They go full like La Casa de Papel. Yep, the carpa is up. Great. So, immediately they deliver 1.5 million kroner down those stairs. You see? The stairs that can't explain how they're in the bank, but also outside of the bank. How is everybody still moving around this area? Yep. That's the area. So he is now checking these notes and he realizes they're freshly printed, which means they can be tracked. So now he starts losing his mind. He wants untraceable money, so he wants like the used notes. But when he's told that he needs to wait for that money to, for them to actually accumulate that amount of money, which is not just freshly printed, he starts losing it. Which is one thing we're gonna see a lot in this case. So it just goes from like completely calm and under control Olsen to the guy that just loses it and is like highly unstable. Now this guy can be compared with so many things. He's like a girl PMSing for the first time, right? Do you ever think about that when you had your first PMS? Like, no, nobody thinks about that because you just lived through it. But if you think about that, it's like that very first PMS when you don't understand why you're losing it and then you're completely normal the next moment. But it's happening and you are like living it. Or he's like a guy that leaves a relationship and then he's like really tough, like with his friends, like, no, I moved on, it's all great, call me up some bitches, And then 60 seconds later it's like, I miss her, bro, I miss her. Or I saved the best one for the last, of course. It's like when your parents divorce after being married for like a quarter of a century, and then 1 second they're like, no, we split our friends. This, you cannot hang out with this person. You cannot hear from this person again. This is insane. You choose your side. Are you gonna be with your dad or your mom? Like, you choose it. And then the very next moment they're like, it's fine. We are just here taking care of what's the best for the kids. And you're just like, which one is it, man? Make up your fucking mind. Moral of the story, somebody just let dynamite loose and then threw a fucking match, and you never know when the match is going to reach dynamite. That's a shitty thing, because the match is eventually gonna run out of the spark. What the fuck? I think I gave you enough examples. Think about your first PMS, okay? Now they're like, okay, cool, he passed test number 1, test number 2, they park up a blue Ford Mustang in front of the bank so that he can see it. But again, he's like, this is too easy, they have monkeyed the car, they have probably concealed like a radar device or something that would just give away the location of it. And he was right for that matter, because they have actually placed helicopters in the air as well, organized roadblocks, because they actually, I think like at this point they were like, yep, this guy just wants all of this, let's figure it out in a day, and this is gonna be done in the same day. Well, spoiler alert, it doesn't go that way. So in terms of this, the police is, because they thought like everything is gonna be done in a day, they're actually doing a great job. So it's extra security, exits of the city and also airports have had extra guards on them, everybody's on high alert. And the car kind of has a tank full of gas, but they know like how far he can reach out with that car as well. And again, the ignition keys are not in there, they're with the police. What I think should have been the clue that this is not a one-day thing is once he gives the phone to the hostages to phone their families. So this is when like all of them try to reach them. Actually, 2 of them can't reach their families and Brigitte can only reach the nanny of the kids. And after that, she just breaks down crying and he like empathizes with her, and she always says like how nice that was, that, you know, somebody was actually caring about her and how she felt. Now, to assess the whole situation, he actually walks around the bank, so he paces back and forth, but he's avoiding the windows and also uses the hostages as human shields, so they walk with him. I put, now this is the time to do it with some sick music, because just imagine like you're outside, you're like, oh great, this is a professional guy, and you just see somebody like slow-mo walking back and forth with like 3 other people that have been tied up. So this is when like the bank robbery meets the parody in my eyes, because, you know, I'm like heavily imagining it. Now, they're actually pretty quick in complying with his third request, which is releasing his mate Clark out of the prison. And this is the first time Olsen starts speaking in Swedish, and they're like, oh, okay, he's not American. Great. Also, that whole front would have made sense maybe if he was actually planning to get the fuck out of there within like minutes or on that same day. But that whole front of just like pretending to be American does not make any fucking sense, like, for the later events. Now the dynamic changes a bit when Clark is there. He kind of takes the lead during this first day. So he is the one now taking conversations, like starting conversations with the police. The hostages situation kind of improves, so they're released from their bonds, so they're not tied up anymore. And Clark starts like taking over the bank. He's kind of like moving around freely, which means he blows up a cash box and already takes 19,000 kroner from there. He also, by doing so, on the first floor discovers Sven Sveistrom, junior executive, hiding in a stockroom, and he invites him downstairs to have a drink. You know, you're one of us now, you're one of the hostages, let's do this. And what nobody expected is that this is gonna go into the night. Now, the night is approaching, and Olsen is kind of like, oh, where am I gonna place this newfound family? Where are we all gonna sleep? And he's like, whoa, light bulb moment. What do banks have? They have safes. This isn't like the best option because Elizabeth actually suffers from claustrophobia. So Olsen actually is like, oh, that's all great, I'm a generous guy, so I'm gonna offer to tie a knot around your neck and let you kind of like be at the door of the wall, so, you know, you kind of guard it, yeah? What I'm gonna do though is like put this explosive underneath your legs so that you can't actually calm down or move or be comfortable in any way. Now again, she describes this as like such an act of kindness, which makes me like completely just not understand Stockholm syndrome, because like how do you not freak out this moment? How do you see this as an act of kindness? Because you snooze, you lose, basically. At any point, a red flag should literally pop up, being risen above your head. It is this. You're nice until now, you're a nice person, right? And this is when you stop, because you have dynamite underneath you. What the fuck? This guy is not taking care of you. He doesn't give a fuck about you. He's gonna blow you the fuck up. He's taking hostages. As chess players, it's like, that doesn't have any consideration towards you. Like, how are you still feeling gratitude and feeling like, oh, this is so great? Literally, if you move your leg differently, if you don't sleep in the stiffest position possible, you are gonna blow up yourself and everybody else. What is happening? Stop being nice. Be rude, stay alive, you know, the crime junkie rules, you know it. I put red flags all around, like, this is not the guy. This is not the guy you bring to your family to marry, okay? What psychologists have said that this is because of the gratitude that accumulates once you have been denied, like, basic needs for a really long time. So now when you actually get them, so you get to go to the toilet, you get, like, some food, or they let you sleep, you're suddenly, like, really grateful to the captor because you have been denied this, like, the whole day. So now this vault is close to the toilet, so when they pass to the toilet they also pass that staircase that I'm talking about, and he actually loses them out of sight for a brief moment, which is where the police officers are just like chilling, like little monkeys on the trees. These like police officers are kind of there on the staircase, like shh, shh, listen. So Christine passed by and they asked her like to sort of point to how many hostages there are there, and she pointed 4 with her fingers, and she said like that just that act in itself made her feel like she was a traitor. So it's the first night, right? The police thinks they have the upper hand, Olsen thinks he has the upper hand, and his job for Elizabeth that night is to just sit on her chair because she's claustrophobic one. She sits in front of the wall, well, in between the doors, and signals if the police was to appear. But now he's getting into his like paranoid anxiety state. So he's just like, he didn't plan for this to go overnight. So he's like, okay, how do I cut this out, but like for me to still profit out of it? So at 11 p.m. he calls the Prime Minister, Palma. Okay. What's up, Swedes? Do you just have what, yellow books with the numbers of the people in the government? Presidents? Yeah. Monarchs? Do you have the monarch's number here? What is going on? How does this guy have the number? So he reminds me yet another sad story of a 15-year-old Maja who would just like target a person and be like, no, that person is going to be my friend, so I would ask them for a number, and then as every normal friend does, I would message them at like 2 in the morning as like the first message, totally not sending the wrong lesbian vibes. It's always just like, hey, what's up and what you doing, and they'll be like, this is slightly uncomfortable. Why is the Prime Minister chill for this guy to call him at 11 p.m? Hello, there's some modales, okay? Don't call a person after like 8 p.m. What the fuck are you doing? They're just chilling, having downtime, getting late. Why is this guy in the office? Why is anything happening here? And now it's like important to understand this guy didn't have that much of an elaborate plan from the first point. Like, I mean, if that wasn't clear so far, because he's clearly going into the night, doesn't have like the plan of the building, people are passing by on the stairs, weird shit is happening. So he tells Palma that he either leaves with the hostages or hostages don't leave at all, and then Palma is like, okay, convincing him like none of that is reasonable, what the fuck. So he's like, okay, cool, then you take place of the hostages. And to show that he isn't playing, he lifts Elizabeth from her chair and like wraps his hand around her neck and starts choking her. So it's like close enough to the phone for Palma to hear her, and asks him to make a choice. And he puts like 1 minute of the clock. So it's like 59, 58, time is going down, and the line cuts off. So like sort of just before she was to pass out, he loosened the grip and hung up on the phone. Elizabeth sits down in her chair and just, tries to calm down, go to sleep. And this story gets to go on for 5 more days. Now, before we move on to the events of the other 5 days, let's have the Stockholm Syndrome corner. Just because, for you to understand deeper the relationships between the hostages and the captors, let's just, discuss Stockholm Syndrome in a couple more details. Stockholm Syndrome was coined by Niels Peierot after this robbery, but the actual syndrome was first recognized in the world with Frank Ochberg, the American psychiatrist, after he testified during the Ariel Castro hearing. Ariel Castro, if you remember, is the son of a gun who like kidnapped the girls and kept them for over a decade. It's the case that I said I will never cover just because it's too brutal and makes me too nauseous. So Ockberg further developed the syndrome, and he said it had 3 parts. It consisted of 3 elements. So first one is that the parts that generate attachment and even love on the part of the hostages for the hostage holder. Second part happens after that one and is in reverse, so it's when the kidnapper actually reciprocates this and begins to care about the victim or the hostage. So he actually says that's why like the police and the psychiatrist or negotiators actually want to generate this syndrome if they can when dealing with hostage situations, because they want to humanize them to the captors. And the third element is both parties' mutual contempt for the outside world. Very early on, they are denied the ability to speak, to move, to use the toilet, to eat. And then when they're given these gifts of life, and as they receive them, they have the feelings. So we usually have them when we are infants and we are just close to the mother because we completely depend on that person. Which reminds me, oh my god, okay, so like, you guys know what topics I have covered, you know, like what shit I research and what triggers me and what doesn't. Recently, I have discovered a completely new trigger because I've listened to the podcast that covered rebirthing. That triggered me more than the case of fucking Ariel Castro. It was just so disturbing to listen to it. It's like, it's worse than freaking exorcisms. It's just, I cannot rationalize it in any way. And it's not like a common practice, but it's just the area of crime where I'm like, this is not real. Yeah, I got reminded of it because he said like, yeah, going back to what you felt like as an infant and going back to like your basic instincts. Because rebirthing is basically trying to connect you to, you know, your adoptive parent, I don't know, surrogate parent, when you didn't have any bonds as a child. It is reintroducing that in the form of rebirthing, but it's just too disturbing. It just, no, and usually ends in death, because like people who try to pretend like they're qualified and know what they're doing, they don't. Okay, yep, so yeah, just go listen to, I think it was Red-Handed, if you want to get a bit triggered. Yeah, what are your triggers, guys? So, going back to the story, also know now that these hostages are only as good as he uses them to show his power. So this night in particular is the basis for the Stockholm Syndrome, you know, in this particular situation. Because again, he has the whole power over them while they're sleeping in that vault. And Elizabeth, who is guarding it, actually kind of woke up like shivering during the night, and Olsen just wrapped a jacket around her, and she remembers this as such a nice and thoughtful act. So again, as Niels Beroth said, the main thing about the Stockholm Syndrome is that you unconsciously form a bond with the hostage taker while the outside world poses a threat, and we're gonna see that a lot during the next 5 days. So we'll see a lot of this us versus them mentality. Now I put the day 2 happens, and something as weird, so weird and unnecessary for my own plot happens. Also, it's like, we don't have alarm clocks, so I'm gonna wake these fuckers up by firing again some bullets into the ceiling. Like, mate, if you came in there, like, don't use those bullets, don't you need them for later? Anyways. So, they're all walking up, and he is kind of like weirded out because, like, on those stairs, there's somebody that's calling him Kai. And Kai was another famous bank robber at the time. And so somebody mixed those two up. They thought, like, that Olsen was Kai. And this was his brother out there, because, like, the police was like, oh yeah, let's bring the brother there to rationalize with him a bit. But now this is so offensive, apparently, to Olsen himself. And to Kai, who is extradited in Hawaii, who is like chilling at this safe location in Hawaii. But this causes actual Kai to make a phone call to the police, which means they could pinpoint his location. He was extradited and imprisoned. All of this is just so fucking dumb, but it just speaks to, well, I think it speaks to Olsen's mentality of like, he's tough, he's the main bank robber, like, don't compare me to the other bank robbers of this world, because, you know, this is my kind of situation, this is my show. Now is when he starts requesting, because he's like, yeah, but we're already sleeping here, so he requests bedding and food, and the police asks to personally come in and inspect the hostages. So after this inspection, the police officers come out baffled because they're saying, like, basically it's kind of, it looks like a group of friends. Which for me, like, if I was to go and witness that, I would be like, did they all plan this together? Like, are these tellers behind this kind of thing? Because they're not behaving hostile. In fact, the people that were hostile towards the police was kind of like judgmental looks, like, why are you ruining this? We're clearly here having a blast with these robbers. Why do you have to shit on our parade? Shit on our parade. It's just like spitting. What is that other ridiculous expression I invented? Chewing it up and spitting it out. Something like that. I don't even remember. Yeah, shitting on your parade is something I use on the regular. I just don't like rain on your parade. Like, no. Imagine how much more tragic and intense it would be if it was just shitting from the sky on your parade. That's why I use it. Intensity. Drama. Poetry. Okay, get the fuck on. Move on. So Lindroth, the police officer, comes out and says that basically he gives the statement to the media that they're all behaving as friends. So the family is now outside, where the tent is, and they're thinking like, wow, these, like, my freaking daughters and son are actually aiding the criminal. So the police is like, cool, let's put them on the phone again now with this information to try to sort of break them down. And Brigitte is again the one that breaks down because, well, she has a family and 2 kids. I get I'm an armchair detective here, but why not use Brigitte since the beginning if you're a police? She's clearly the weakest link in this whole situation. This whole underwhelming robbery wouldn't be lasting this fucking long if they just used her since the beginning. Just to influence her, and then she influences the other robbers because she's clearly the most emotional one. Ugh, people. Now imagine like you're on the other side of that phone call, right? So you're speaking to a loved one that's inside the like robbery kind of situation, and they're saying that they're safe with the robber and the biggest threat for them is actually the police. Like, what would you think? Would you actually believe that they're not in on it, or would you actually like think about Stockholm syndrome? Okay, now Olsen, as we know, he's starting to lose his mind again. Guys, he finally got his period and just refused to tell the mom about it. So he just threw a pair of underwear in the garbage and thought, that will pass. It's not period. Nope, of course not. I would know if I've got my period. And then, of course, because it's logical, nobody will check the garbage and feel the smell of the blood. They're just gonna think like it's normal for you to throw your underwear into the garbage. What? Personal story? No, this is a legit story from the newspapers in Sweden, in the National Bank, while this is happening. Another legit account of events that only people from Balkan and from like this part of Europe will actually be able to relate to is that no matter how low-key you keep getting your period, like your mom is going to call all the aunties, gonna call the whole family to be like, oh my god, she's a woman now, she's a woman. And you're just gonna die inside. There's no way of escaping it. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how much. You can throw all of your underwear. You can throw all of your underwear in the garbage. It still doesn't work. Let's go continue with the real story. Not that this was not real. This is very real, okay? So he's kind of like ruminating on what happened last night, right? He had a call with the Prime Minister, and he was the one that kind of lost the power after it. So he's like, okay, how do I recover this power? I'm the man. Fuck everything that happened. He pulls Sven aside. Poor fucking Sven. Also love that name. Because he's just so typically northern, like nobody else would name a child Sven, okay? So as you do, if you are a bank robber, if you're a respectable guy who is trying to show his power, you pull your hostage to the side and you try to convince them to shoot them in the leg. Sven again is like super nice. He is like trying to deny this in the nicest way possible. But now Christina overhears it and she comes and like tries to convince Sven, and like all of them are super fucking nice. This is killing me in this whole story. Christine is like, don't be a pussy, Sven, like it's just a shoot in the leg. Like how kind is this guy to offer not to shoot you, to actually kill you, but just to shoot you in the leg and not hit the bone. Like, now they all decide that Sven is going to give him a signal once he's ready to be shot in the leg. But Sven is just like, never does. He's like, yeah, I fucking actually like this leg a lot. Like I walk on them. So it's yet another night and no movement has been made. It's like the most underwhelming bank robbery ever. So this evening, they have a different approach. Christine actually calls Palma, and this call has been recorded and she listened to it afterwards. So this call lasts for about 42 minutes. And she is trying to convince the Prime Minister that she wants to leave with the captors. So this is like a rough translation from it. Quote, I fully trust Clark and the robber. They haven't done anything to us. On the contrary, they have been very nice. But you know, Olaf, what I'm scared of is that the police will attack and kill us. I want you to let us go away with the robbers. Give them the foreign currency and 2 guns and let us drive off. End quote. And like, there is a script in this New York article. It just basically goes back and forth when Palma is trying to be like, well, come on, like how rational this is, think about this. And she's just like, nope, the police is the bad guy. It's literally just like this. And I'm like, this is second day. How is everybody like this brainwashed at this point? Now this evening, it's kind of like, again, I think this is day 2 or day 3, but there's like starts to be, the bonding gets even a bit weirder because their sleeping arrangements are kind of like slightly off. So basically, in the interviews afterwards, admits that she used to hold hands with Clark. So like her and Clark were both like, well, young and attractive, and they were like, yeah, he provided me with support. So, you know, if I had to like cuddle up at night or, you know, just hold hands with a guy, that was it. Okay, not judging here, but this is day 2 in a freaking robbery. I know the tensions are high. I understand everything. But come on, get a grip. There are other people there that need to sleep to you just like cuddling with a fucking robber. What is happening? Also, who is awake? Who is having a lookout at those stairs and everything? This reminds me of a yet another sad life story in the life of Maja when we went onto like a school trip by the end of a school year when we were 14, 15. And you know how it, when you come from Balkan and, you know, everybody is looking to get the cheapest accommodation. So there's like 5 beds in one room. And a lot of horny teenagers. So of course, what I find out is, when I woke up one of the mornings, is that my mate like is hooked up with some guy and they were making out like literally right next to me. It was like sardines kind of like level of accommodation. And we're just making out during the night. I was like, great, yep, I will never figure out, of course. Also, it doesn't happen if you giggle in the morning in any of those situations. It doesn't really work for your case. This podcast is just eventually going to turn into a sequence of just sad events that make up my life. Sounds like it's heading that way. And then there's an account also where Olsen made, well, advances towards one of the women that stayed anonymous, and he basically proposed to like have sex with her, but instead she offered to get him off. You know, just your typical robber captor experience. So day 3, they send this officer Malm to actually kind of check the situation. So again, this bank is basically open doors. It's like a fucking flea market. Everybody's going in and out as they please. This guy goes in and he actually spots nobody's awake. Like everybody's tired down. They're all in the wall. You would think like this is where it ends, right? Except if you can count, there's still more days to this. But basically, this is not where it ends. This guy goes in and you would think like he would go out or like try to alert the police. I mean, what he does is brave and smart if you think about it. But like this could have all ended if he just managed to like alert the police and then they all barged in. No. Okay. He goes to the vault and like shuts the door and manages to lock it from the outside. And now, when Olsen wakes up, this is when the real brainwashing begins. Because they're all locked in. Also, the switch was kind of on the outside, so they all have that weirdest fucking lighting on them. You know, like the hospital lighting. Or literally, every office I worked for never nailed the lighting. I don't know why. I think that's why I'm sensitive to like any fake lighting in the rooms. I just can't deal with it. Because it's just never like normal room lighting, man. It just always blinds you as fuck. So they're just like blinding lighting all day, all night. They have no idea what day it is, what night it is in that vault. But more importantly, Olsen now believes that the police is gonna use tear gas. And he starts all day long telling the hostages how tear gas damages the brain for the rest of their lives. They're gonna end up brain damaged. And it's again him being like, I'm not the bad guy here. I'm not gonna let you be scarred for life. You know, the police is gonna get against you. His solution to this is he's gonna kill themselves, like he's gonna kill them all and himself if the room is gassed. Now, when you flip the coin again, everybody's thankful because they're like, oh my god, he's gonna prevent us from being brain damaged for life. Like, God save me. Just this whole case. So, quarantine mode is on, right? The police strategy now is to starve them all, to like basically exhaust them all, because the light is blazing all day, all night, deny them food and water in hope that like Olsen actually is tired himself so he doesn't shoot everybody when they actually introduce this tear gas. And inside they go on full quarantine mode because they're all bored, they're all stuck in there. They start up their routines, they do like divide these things into like doing their own chores, dining on like the leftover food as evenly as possible. You know, something we can all know a lot about right now. They designate a toilet area, which would totally be my kind of chore during the during this kind of situation. What would be yours? Would you be, what chore would you be doing stuck in a bank vault? Okay, so now I found a really interesting quote, because now they're all chatting shit, right? They're all just stuck in there, they have to talk. So Brigitte actually asked the pair of robbers why they actually haven't tried to hold down regular jobs. And what Clark says is, quote, "We don't care to punch clocks. We don't like to take orders." He also says he agrees that there is the basis for prisons. But he says, but what was the use of prisons if convicts had nowhere to go when they were released? They give you 50 kroner when you leave. What we really need is another chance to make ourselves a future, Clark said. So I think this kind of speaks to the mentality of Olsen and Clark and this duo of robbers and how they see themselves fitting into the society. The police kind of has the upper hand now, of course, because these are bitches are literally locked in. But why they're not immediately barging in is because they're tactically thinking about this. So they're digging the holes, this is taking some time, and then they're thinking how to again deploy this gas in such a way that Olsen doesn't shoot and doesn't actually kill everybody. So he does a couple of things when they're drilling the holes. One of them more sensical, makes more sense than the others. As they dig the first hole, he throws an explosive up in the air and tells the hostages to open their mouths to equalize the pressure. And again, everybody is oh my god, this is so considerate of him. Allow it. Now it goes into the completely other extreme, because they continue drilling and the drill cuts into the wall and cuts the cable. So their light is cut off and they're now in complete darkness. Again, because this is 1970s, I don't know if anybody there is using the drill, can confirm that this is how you do it, because they're drilling the whole day, the drills are overheated, so now they are actually watering the drills. They're just cooling them off with water, and the water is seeping through the vault, and these hostages who are thirsty as hell are taking those drops from the carpet and from the floor. Now, a less sensible thing Olsen does is, as they drill the holes, he tries to shut the holes with paper. It's only efficient. It's only partially efficient. It's drill versus paper, mate. Rock, paper, scissors. What wins? I actually still don't know how to play that game. God, I'm 27. I don't know shit about life. Extremes. It's doesn't know how to play rock, paper, scissors. Doesn't know how to live. Now, speeding up to day 5 into this thing, because basically it is as underwhelming. They're just shitting in a basket, these guys are drilling the holes, he is going around chewing on caffeine tablets and trying to fill up holes with freaking paper. Soundproof studios, huh? Doesn't seem like such a bad idea now. Day 5. Okay, his idea now. Now, if somebody was to tell me this, I would be fuck Stockholm Syndrome. Fuck you, as my captor, what is this? What he does is, he creates nooses. First of all, where'd you get the rope? But anyways, he creates the nooses and puts them around the hostage necks and ties them on the highest of the safety boxes in this vault. He is now trying to, screaming so people upstairs hear him. And he's threatening that they're all gonna be hanged if they tear gas them. This is when the police is kind of okay, cool, let's try calm them down. They're clearly starved, yeah? They lower the beer and the sandwiches through these holes. But Olsen spots that the beer tops weren't on completely, so he's yo, this is those with sleeping pills, don't drink it. He was actually right. And now again, how kind of him, he allows the hostages to remove the nooses when they go to bed. Mate, you still know the noose is there waiting for you for the morning. This doesn't do shit. Now, in the most underwhelming of the resolutions of this case, the police actually managed to dug all the holes that they needed to spread out, the tear gas equally in that vault. And on August 29th, 15 canisters of gas were released, with the officers and ambulances waiting outside. So Olsen actually surrendered. He just screamed, yeah, I give up, and he kind of didn't shoot, put his arm down. But what they found so strange, even outside, because they were trying to escort hostages first, as you do, and what they found strange is they were coming out with them so that people, snipers or anybody doesn't actually shoot the captors. And the police is okay, calm down, we're not gonna harm them, this is so weird. Also, the hostages, they start hugging the robbers and saying goodbye. And they're all kind of saying goodbye in such a way where it's yeah, see you soon, And the police is just stunned all the time. And even at the trial, these hostages actually spoke like in the defense of the robbers. So Clark went back to prison to finish his sentence, and there are reports that Christine actually had like a romantic relationship with him. Like, girl, I know it's hard, okay? I'm resisting pen paling a prisoner, not in that way, but in a way of like kind of like picking their brain as to why the fuck they stabbed a person. Anyways. Personal story, different story. But like, you can't form this much of a bond with somebody for like 6 days. I just don't get it. Olsen got 10 years in prison, and then he married, moved to Thailand. Now he is still alive. He's in Sweden selling cars. It's like the underwhelming endings of this life. Why didn't he stay in Thailand? That would at least be cooler than this. Olsen has shown remorse for his actions as a habitual offender, and has openly apologized to hostages, and they're all like, no, it's great, this was such a great experience. Like, fuck me with this story, okay? Elizabeth went on to become a nurse, Christine is a therapist now, and Brigitte returned to work for the bank. That was like a couple of years after, so I don't know if they're actually doing these jobs right now, okay? And Christine listened to this call, even like after, like when she went to to become a therapist, she listened to the call with the Prime Minister, and she said like still that she wasn't brainwashed, and like all she did was try to survive. But then again, she said the police were the bad guys, and basically she trusted the captors more than she trusted the police. Now, to actually understand the motives of this extremely underwhelming robbery, let's just discuss the background of the hostages and the captor. Jan Olsen was born in 1941 in the south of Sweden. He was a thief from his young days, so basically everything from home burglaries, where we have this beautiful event where apparently there was this, like, he basically burgled somebody's house, and what they remembered about him is that as he was robbing it, an old man like was in need of medication because he was like anxious and freaked out by this guy robbing his freaking house. And he apparently, in the midst of robbery, actually helped out this old man to get his medication and then just continued robbing them. Again, as you do as a professional, like the show must go on. It just must. For some reason, this guy was like, no, this is my job. I do it until I can't do it anymore. This guy is clearly not a threat, so yeah, I'm just gonna continue robbing their fucking house. So he was just developing his CV, he was developing these skills for this ultimate robbery that just like was pointlessly dragged on for 6 days. And in Sweden, apparently, well, at least back in the day, probably now as well, they did this thing which I mentioned in the other episode as my vision of like how prisons should operate with the least offensive like offenders, which is that they allow them to go out during the day and then they come back home, they come back to their prison home to sleep there. So in prison, our mastermind is thinking of a plan. He's like, yep, I'm gonna flee the country somewhere where I can't be extradited. So now, he didn't get a rehabilitation memo in prison, right? So he's not like coming outside and like during the day and becoming a greater guy. No, he's actually following what's happening in the news and in the politics, and he's plotting in his cell. So to get extradited, he needs to be furloughed. And who is gonna do this? Well, the Socialist Party and the current Prime Minister, because he knew at the time Sweden was critical of Soviet Union, invasion of Czechoslovakia, and frowned upon like the apartheid in South Africa. And even due these like really strong political views, like the Prime Minister was still well respected. Also, Sweden was kind of preoccupied at the time because they were still a monarchy, and King Gustav favored the Prime Minister, but like King Gustav was also basically at his deathbed at the time. Oh god, I don't know what I listened to, but I put he was a chill monarch. He never wore a crown, but was in health as he was 90. Basically, it's just all how like there are like all these records about how he was actually, down to earth and like speaking to the public. Just like chill monarch. Yep, that explains everything, Maja. Please don't put anything else in the script to fucking elaborate. So, in the prison, he forms this plan that he will not be robbing the bank for the money. Well, not only for the money, but for the hostages as well, as like a bargaining chip. So, safe passage for the lives of the hostages. In his head, that's how it works. There were upcoming elections in September. He knew this was the weakness that he can exploit, because he knew like Prime Minister and everybody is going to actually join on to this hostage situation. So he has a better chance of like getting out of the country. Because, as like if they let him get the fuck out. If the government handles it in such a way where, yeah, he just gets out with the hostages, then they're all gonna be like favored, as if. So he's planning this for months, and then one day just decides to use his daytime when he's outside of the prison to actually put this plan into the action. He was also like getting fit in prison, apparently doing a lot of push-ups and squats, which is, yeah, what you do if you wanna get out during the day and rob a bank. And then while he's out, he's setting these eyes and basically going out scouting for which bank would be the best to rob. And well, boy did he fail there. Also, could he have not like bribed somebody for like the plans of the bank, for this to have like something? Just give me something, man. And who would be the lucky hostages, he wondered. Well, he had Christine, who moved to Stockholm at her fiance's request. But then that fizzled out. She broke off that engagement, and she was supposed to join a social work course in the fall, but actually started enjoying the life in the bank and in Stockholm finally, as she broke off that, shitty engagement. That's what happens when you cut out shit of your life. Yes, Christine. Elizabeth was like the bubbly, free-spirited girl who changed different jobs in Sweden. She was looking forward to the weekend, as she liked to have fun, party with her friends and, have that crayfish stuff. She was the cashier in the foreign exchange department who had been with the bank for 14 months. This fucking sentence. There's always a pointless sentence that's copy-pasted in the script. Small and blonde, she had brown eyes, whose essential expression was one of unusual gentleness. Gives me nothing. How is this relevant? I don't need her physical description. I mean, if it doesn't serve the purpose. Does it serve the purpose? No. Fuck's sake. She again kind of was working there, until something better comes along, and for her something better was again in the fall, her nursing school. Just literally everybody was just passing their time in this bank. Kind of like me for the past couple of years, just being like, yep, this is not my job. No, my life is my job, okay? I just don't. This is a side thing. It's like I have an outlook towards my actual jobs that I get paid the way that hood guys consider their side chicks. I'm like, no, don't mention it. It does not exist. I don't even kiss her when I make love to her. I don't even kiss her when I fuck her. No. I don't even show remote interest or joy working here. Is it obvious I don't share this podcast with anybody in my workplace? Is it? And Brigitta, she had 2 kids and she loved her family life. So she lived in a suburb she commuted to the work from, where she lived with a civil engineer of a husband and their 2 daughters. And she was always the super responsible one, the one that where if she was to be late, you would just know something is wrong. You would be like, yep, this is not like her. This is definitely not like her. Also, I would say, because I'm that person as well, I would say have like keywords, like if you were ever to be in a situation where you get kidnapped or anything. But not something bizarre, okay? Like if somebody was to give you a call and you wanted it to mean like call the police, I'm in danger, have something like, oh yeah, I'll be home for dinner. Like something that's not like that nobody can figure out, but only you and the person you're speaking with from your house can figure out. So like, hey, we never eat dinner, this means something is wrong. Don't let Stockholm Syndrome kick in, yeah? That's the moral of this story. August 23rd will be the day these women acquaint each other under pressure. So this is the very underwhelming case of Stockholm Syndrome and how the term has been coined and the robbery that caused for the term to be coined. Let's discuss the motives behind the story. I put that it was the only thing he knew how to do, plus like the message that he wanted to send. I think it was kind of like, we might disagree on the message, but like in my head, this is the only thing I think I'm good at, even though I ended up in prison for, so clearly not the genius. I think his message was, I'm the man, like I'm the robber, don't compare me to anybody else, this is revolutionary, nobody has done this type of thing before, I'm using hostages as a bargaining chip. And you're like, yeah mate, so is every single robber out there. Like, I know it's 1970s, but like literally everybody's plan is to use hostages to their own advantage, it's not to turn them against you. Also, I kept one of his quotes for this. So he said, quote, "This is my own story, you understand. To be a thief and a safecracker, that's easy. I've been those. But to take hostages in a bank in the middle of a great capital, there is something." End quote. So obviously he sees this as like a bigger deal than just being a robber. So he's like, no, this is how I'm successful as a robber. I create this bond with the hostages. and like I used it to my own advantage. And well, hey, good job, you coined the term. Technically not even you, but the psychiatrist coined the term. But yeah, you caused them to. That's your success of the day. I think as a secondary motive you could kind of say that this was more political than maybe something else. I really don't think the motivation here was the money. At least it was something like had something to prove, together with him trying to actually be the big deal who is like going to go to a country where he can't be extradited and just live his best life. And he saw the way to do this with the current political situation in Sweden. You know where to find me to let me know what you think. You guys probably might have different opinions, because this was a long-ass case. It's also like one of the most famous robberies, even though it's so underwhelming. So yeah, send me any stories of you being a part of a bank robbery, or hearing of somebody who has been part of the bank robbery, because they will probably give me more life than this story. The sources for this podcast have been the New Yorker article, The Bank Drama. Hardly dramatic. The Express article, We Were the First Victims of Stockholm Syndrome. Wikipedia on Jan Olsen, the journal article Where Stockholm Syndrome phase came from, and the hostage episodes, the 2-part series on Spotify. That's it. Hope you learned something, even though it was underwhelming as hell. Hope you come out of this enlightened and you're like, ooh, I bet you didn't know where Stockholm Syndrome came from. Let me tell you a story. And then you go on for an hour to tell them this, yeah? Yeah, you do that to your friends. Fuck them up for life. Bank robbery stories, I want them in my fucking inbox, okay? Let's put some actual bank drama out there. Okay? I'll read them out loud, don't worry. Now, what do we have here? Why sound like an auntie at a toddler's birthday party? What the actual fuck? Well, what we have here is yet another channel where you guys can follow me. Did I just smack my leg? Could you hear that? That BAM pod is on Instagram now as well, guys. Instead of just recommending you more podcasts now, what I'm gonna be doing in this first official full week on Instagram is just every day share what podcasts I listen to on a daily basis. So which ones I subscribe to, what got me into them, all of that jazz, like BTS kind of thing. BTS is behind the scenes. I love using abbreviations and pretending like they're saving me so much time. And then looking at other people react like, yeah, they're really not. I'm like, they really are. The hardest ones for me to learn were TLDR, too long didn't read, and ICYMI, in case you missed it. Yeah, those were the ones that I could never remember. If anybody gave a fuck about that, probably not. So I'll be putting my podcast in the stories, hashtag my weekly pods or weekly podbamn. Something better if I come up with it, or if you do, So go find me, follow me. Twitter and Instagram basically have the same handle. How easy do I make it for you? Also, for the listeners in the UK, they finally put Modern Family, first 7 seasons or something, and New Girl, again 6 seasons, 7, I don't know really, on our Netflix. So go binge on that if you are not done with the freaking binging, because I'm kind of reaching my very peak limit. For Nick from New Girl, I'll do it. Nick from New Girl is probably the one white crush that I had, that I was like, not all white people are ugly. It was kind of like, maybe I could go out with a white man at some point. Yeah, that didn't last for long, did it? And if you're fed up with Netflix, you can always find me on Patreon. Because Stockholm Syndrome is still bugging me in my head, after doing this case, I decided to cover the case of Patty Hearst. So that's your May BAM-sode on freaking Patreon for this month. And now I shall leave you, but not before. You're going into your next Zoom meeting. What are you doing there? We still don't know if the quarantine is over. We still don't know if anything is going to be lifted. How soon it's going to be lifted. So this is the perfect timing. Listen to me, listen. It's the perfect timing to tell you work husband or work wife how you feel. Doesn't matter. Meeting of 20 people. You do you, okay? The meeting starts and you tell them can you just stay a bit after the meeting, yeah? Can you just stay linked into this link, yeah? Stay online, yeah? Wink, wink. And then tell them, how you're my work wife. And she's probably gonna be like, no, this is news to me, what the fuck? And you tell them, well, I told about 100 people, so you might as well be. That's how you get them. That's the punchline. Or you just use one of your dumb Zoom backgrounds to show where you can bring them, to show fucking, I don't know, Paris or Mount Everest or some shit in the background, be like, this is how rich I am. This is how I get you. Promise them the world, over-promised. They don't know. They still don't have access to your bank account. But also, even at best, like, you're still gonna have at least a couple of days for the awkwardness to pass before you're back in the office with this person, so you might as well use it. Seize the moment. Unless, don't fucking listen to me. Unless you actually have a real wife, and then you're giving hopes to some like poor girl who is like apparently a work wife and she isn't even aware of it, like then what the fuck are you doing? Also, how much time you have on your hands to be starting a whole new relationship while working from home? Some people have some serious time for double lives, yo. Question those fuckers, yeah? Question them. Find motives behind this. Find how much time, how do they still have 24 hours in a day but still live these lives? What are the motives behind their actions? How do they do this? Why do they do this? It's so much effort. Like, just lie on your couch, man, chill. Yeah, go into the meeting and question the intentions of somebody who tells a work wife to stay after the Zoom call. But more importantly, keep questioning the motives behind crimes. And in doing so, keep making the world a better place, one motive at a time. Bye, fuckers.